Hello and welcome to the Sac Off podcast. We are back for our second week in our weekly King series where we are bringing you takes from Sacramento and, of course, in London where my good friend Oscar Hazel is. Oscar, first I have to say, this whole 6:30 a.m. football thing, I'm not enjoying that too much. I blame you.
Oh, it's good for me. I think it was at 1 p.m. here, or maybe 2 p.m. because our clocks go back a bit earlier. But it's maybe better than the 80th NBA Kings game at 3 a.m. when you've won 28 games. So there's worse. There's worse times to be awake. And at least that game went to the end.
Yeah, I can't really complain about 6:30 a.m. now.
Yeah, when Monday night football's or like Pac-12 football, when that ends and the sun's coming up, that's pretty brutal after a whole day of watching college football.
I have a new admiration for your dedication to watching football.
It's just I got into Pac-12 football from VHSs, so I didn't really comprehend what time they were played at, and then when the internet came and you could watch games whenever, and that's the same with the Kings, then you realize, and like you can't really watch. I find it so hard to watch sport when it's not live. So then when it's on, you kind of have to be there. But at least the 3 a.m. starts, I can have a nap in between. But anyway, we don't need to talk about my sleeping habits.
We'll save that for another show.
Yeah.
So on today's episode, we're going to talk a lot about Kings lineups, Kings rotations, not just the starting lineup for tomorrow's game against Los Angeles Clippers, but different situational lineups, rotations in the clutch, what's going to happen, lineups for the future, all of that, everything in between. We're going to talk about our season predictions for the team, how many wins we could see this team turning around. Maybe someone doesn't see them turning around at all. Of course, it's not going to happen here. Also previewing this week's upcoming games. We got 3 on the schedule before our next podcast. We'll take a look at those. And joining us next week will be Fly By Night on Twitter, or a.k.a. Justin Russo. So next week he'll be joining us. And real quickly, before we kick off with Oscar talking about some of the starting lineups for this coming week, we do want to say real quickly our thoughts and prayers go out to Flip Saunders' family. As everyone knows by now, Flip Saunders passed away at the age of 60 over the weekend as a result of cancer. So just want to send out our thoughts and prayers to his family, Timberwolves organization. Flip Saunders will be remembered. And if you saw Kevin Garnett's picture, that was, man, it's just make sure to see that picture because you have to see it. So on a lighter Kings note, let's flip to the rotations and starting with you, Oscar.
Well, I guess we can. I think we know who's going to be like the 3 starters kind of every week, barring health. Sounds like it's going to be Rondo, Gay, and Boogie. And then I guess what will be interesting is which position or who's playing the 4 out of Boogie and Gay. So I assume that will be generally what will change in terms of who's playing the 2 would be my assumption. Although kind of Carl's been talking about James Anderson starting over Ben McLemore, but we'll see if that actually happens. Maybe we should start with kind of like Ben's role, because there was a couple of quotes from Vlade Divac in the offseason about when they were talking about what Carl was saying they needed on the roster. And he said, we have Boogie, Gay, and Ben as the core, and we need these other pieces around. And so the Darren Collison exclusion from that, I think kind of makes sense because he never played for Carl. But then Ben to be one of the core players, and Vlade's talked about how he's like the key for the future. So I think that's kind of interesting that now it almost sounds like the long picture view. Carl maybe hasn't got that same patience. So we'll see, maybe if Ben does play, maybe that's not necessarily a Carl decision. Or it could just be, another thing Carl's talked about is the starters may not necessarily be the players who play the most. So I think that could be, in particular, when Willie Cauley-Stein starts games, I don't think he's going to play more than Kufos to start with. And if James Anderson were to start games, I think maybe he would only play maybe 12, 16 minutes, but it's just the way in which it starts a rotation. So then maybe the coming off the bench would be Collison, Bellinelli, McLemore, Caspi, and Kufos as a bench unit if James Anderson starts. So maybe it's just a way of getting like a different bench on a more, or if Kufos is starting, you have Willie Cauley-Stein in there. That's a really athletic running bench unit. So maybe that could be part of the reason why you wouldn't start Ben. Also, James Anderson is going to be less usage, but I mean, if you're starting, and maybe that's also part of the decision if playing Kufos, who has slightly more of an offensive game, which it sounds like he will against the Clippers. So then maybe you want a lower usage guy along with Rondo, and Anderson can still knock down open shots, but he can't do as much creating getting to the rim, I don't think. So maybe that's one reason he always wants 2 low usage guys on the floor when you have Gay and Boogie out there. So that maybe that's one reason. He's also talked about James Anderson being the best perimeter defender, which an on-ball defender. So that's maybe a bit of an issue, and maybe that's another reason with the JJ Redick matchup and just fighting off, getting around screens quickly. Maybe that's coming into thought in terms of that matchup. But personally, I think the decision should be whether they're starting Gay at the 4 or Willie, and then maybe then you play James Anderson and McLemore together, and that would be the small ball starting lineup. And then when you're playing bigger teams, you either play Kufos or Willie. And I think later in the year we'll see Willie starting, and maybe even the second game against the Clippers, maybe we see like an adjustment, seeing how Willie fares against Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan. And I think it's also of note that it was Blake Griffin they brought up in terms of a difficult matchup. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how the bigs, especially DeMarcus, who he defends, whether he's defending centers and then playing playing out more, and then whether that means that other teams will defend him with a center, which would probably be preferable in terms of taking away rim protection. So that would be quite interesting as well, just kind of how that dynamic works. What's kind of your thoughts on that? I guess it's kind of easier to talk about the starting lineup that we know is probably going to happen tomorrow. And I guess like the Rondo thing, we can't really talk much about because that's kind of the decision that Carl is really confident about. And I like the way that he's pitched it though, in terms of Collison leading the second unit and being a leader on that unit. So he's kind of made it very positive to Collison. So I think that's been kind of a good approach, and Carl hasn't exactly approached things greatly, but I thought he's done that quite well.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing you brought up is with the start is their name will be in the starting lineup, but you said doesn't mean they're going to be playing the most minutes. Perfect example of that, as you mentioned, James Anderson, Willie Cauley-Stein, Willie Cauley-Stein's still a rookie. We're still talking about 20 minutes a game. Kufos is going to be playing more. So, but just for this matchup, first game of the season, Blake Griffin. One thing you mentioned is about, and this goes to Kufos likely being a starting lineup tomorrow, is about who Boogie faces, and I do think we're going to see him more taking on the center, and it's just so they're looking for that, and I think that's why Kufos is going to be in the lineup instead of Willie Cauley-Stein. But just one other thing you mentioned is just about with decision with Rondo, and well, actually more so with Collison, is that I do kind of agree, because I mean I've been critical of Carl recently, but that decision because I mean this isn't. He wants to be starting, so he's not exactly getting a role he wants. But putting that role in a way where he sees it as you are the leader of the second unit, you're going to command the floor, and putting him in that position where he feels like he has control and the power of the game flow and everything that's going on. I feel like that was a good move by Carl. Just overall, I think I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of interested to see how the Lakers lineup looks, or the lineup against the Lakers looks as well. Just because
I
Julius
think that's
Randle.
a game where you could go really small.
Yeah, that's the game where I'm more interested to see like what changes they make to the lineup.
Yeah, I think with because it sounds like, well, with the Lakers, like Kobe's probably going to be playing the three, so then you can put maybe that's a game where you see James Anderson and McLemore starting and Gay at the four. That would kind of make sense. And then I think Gay can easily handle Julius Randle.
Yeah.
So that kind of works. I guess what will be interesting, maybe we should move to like the clutch time lineups. Because there was one comment from Collison saying it doesn't matter who starts, it's who finishes. So then maybe he knows he'll be finishing games. And that could be with Rondo. I kind of have a feeling, I think it was 2 or 3 days ago when there was a lineup of in practice scrimmage of Rondo, Collison, and Bellinelli with Gay and Cousins. I kind of have a feeling that maybe the lineup when they're behind in the clutch. So lots of shooting and Rondo, which kind of makes sense. How that stops people, I'm not sure. That would be my one concern. But I guess if you're trying to catch up, you're maybe happy to allow some penetration or like good ISO matchups that generally teams will go to ISO in the clutch. So maybe if you're giving like someone's wing and they're happy to post up and shoot fadeaway jumpers on Marco Bellinelli, you'll take that if you can then run little screen and 3-pointers the other end. So that's kind of my initial impression of what the clutch lineup's going to be. But maybe it won't be against the Clippers just because of the size. I guess one other thing with Kufo starting, when you look at the bench the Clippers have, they don't really have a center. In preseason they've been playing Josh Smith at the center, so then that's a better matchup for Willie Cauley-Stein if he was playing the center against him, where he can still guard him in the perimeter. So maybe that's also part of the decision making as well, who the bench lines up, and they have a really small front court when you get down into their depth. So you could have Caspi and Willie Cauley-Stein as that bench front court, and that I think matches up pretty well.
Yeah. One thing that, just going back, we talked about this last week. We did kind of like Kufos coming off the bench because that screen guy to set up Marco. But obviously, we're going to see Kufos in starting line. But also with this, you mentioned the usage. Willie Cauley-Stein, low usage, and James Anderson, low usage. It's possible. It's just starting Anderson in there to help give more balance to that lineup with Cousins and Gay. But that second unit of Collison, McLemore, Bellinelli, and you have Cauley-Stein providing defense. I could see that it's just going to be changing so much that I'm just going through different lineups.
Well, I guess I don't think they're going to platoon that much. I think they'll probably try and split up the minutes so you don't have Gay and Cousins sitting at the same time. I think ideally you want to have one of them on the floor most of the time. Although maybe with Collison and Bellinelli, you don't really need to, and you want kind of energy around those two. So you have Caspi and Willie Cauley-Stein crashing the boards, running and flying about, and then just Collison and Bellinelli just flying. So I'm not sure. That would be kind of interesting. I think we're going to learn a lot this first week, especially seeing the Clippers twice, kind of how they make adjustments, and then seeing kind of a team, the Lakers, that they play pretty small. So I think it's going to be, we'll learn a lot quite quickly. and it's quite a tough first 10 games as well. So it may not go that well, but early on. But I don't think that's necessarily bad. I guess to me, I would like Ben to start just because I think it's a pretty important year for him, and I think it's better to give him the benefit of doubt early on, and partly because he's taken such big steps year 1 to year 2, and he did that with kind of a slow start to year 2. The first 4 games were pretty rough, and then kind of a fire lit under him. And in that starting lineup of maybe less so with Kufos in there because he's a pretty useful offensive player, but the assumed general starting lineup of Willie Cauley-Stein, and then you have Rondo. You have 2 guys that shouldn't really be taking shots. So then Ben being that third option, I think that is good for his game to kind of be higher up in the hierarchy of who should be getting shots. But maybe that's also the idea of him maybe not starting this first game would be to feature him in the second unit and get him going against kind of lesser defenders. Although and it sounds like Lance Stevenson's going to be starting for the Clippers, so then maybe that's kind of one of those part of the idea is to, if Lance is on, because he's looked pretty good in preseason, so maybe that's kind of one of the ideas of not starting Ben is to get him away from Lance.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know, when you like we talked about with Ben McElwain's starting lineup, I do feel like you have Rondo and Cauley-Stein who won't be shooting that much. You're letting McLemore be the third guy. And also in that situation where he's with Cousins, where Cousins is one of the best passing big men in the game. If he sees double team everything and Ben gets open outside, that's something they could set up. And I'm not sure that there would be as much of that opportunity with Cauley-Stein if Ben's coming off the bench. So it is all about confidence. Again, I feel like being in that starting lineup would give Ben that confidence. And after a rough preseason, I think giving him even that little extra boost could help. And just really, I mean, I know maybe second unit, you guy could get himself going, but most confidence you can get is if you're going against starters and start finding a way to do your thing.
I guess as we talk about, are there any other kind of bench units you're looking forward to seeing?
Oh,
I'd quite like to see Moreland play. So even if it's just for 3-minute spells at the end of games, or especially in smaller lineups, or so I don't think you can really play him with Willie Cauley-Stein, although they've tried that before. But I think he works quite well if maybe you have Caspi out there and you go really small. So Caspi at the 4. I think that's quite fun just because, I mean, Moreland just is bouncy. He gets rebounds. I think if his per 36 for preseason, granted it was 2 games of averaged about 15 minutes, but it would have been 5.5 blocks and 17 rebounds. So he's just everywhere. So I think he's a guy that if you just play for 5 minutes, say at the end of the half, and he can just swing momentum. I know Carl's talked about getting energy guys on at the end of the third quarter, and that's really where you take over. You can swing a game or take over a game. So I think he would be kind of an interesting guy to just play for 8 minutes, and you just have him fly around and just cause havoc and try and change a game defensively.
Yeah, and I think that does go with which might end the game and getting those high energy guys like Caspi, like Darren Collison. So I think you get those 3 guys together and find out another guard. I think end of the bench. I think once you mentioned that, those 3 would work perfectly together.
And maybe they try and have kind of unit, not necessarily entire units, but maybe backcourts and front courts that go together, and so they interchange. That'd be quite nice to see, I think. So if you had Collison and Bellinelli almost attached to the hip, so you always have those 2 out. Although I know Rondo kind of asked for a shooter like Bellinelli, so maybe he wants to play with Marco Abyss as well. But I kind of like the idea of having, especially early on in the year, try and make certain guys play a lot together to build that chemistry.
Yeah, I think Kufos with Marco also just saying those.
Yeah, that looked really fun.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
so
like Kufos is happy to like be out in the perimeter setting blocks. He seems to kind of relish it. And I think he works really well with Rondo as well, though. That side pick and roll looked really good, and just Rondo can even like dissect it even when it's iced, which most players can't really. And maybe it's because he's not really aggressive. He's kind of patient, and he lets the roller get to close to the basket and kind of open up. So yeah,
yeah,
I think
and that goes back to the thing of just letting these guys in the specific small groups getting their timing down early, and just so later in the season it's perfection. It's second nature.
I guess should we talk about clutch when they're ahead? I think you have to have Willie Cauley-Stein on, or even if it's like the last 20 seconds of a game and you have to get a stop, I think you always want Willie Cauley-Stein out there and you're switching.
Yeah,
I
think it's mandatory.
Yeah, because we saw it in one preseason game. I think it was against Portland, where he just switched onto a perimeter defender and just took away the free. Granted, it was like the bench of Portland, which is one of the worst benches, but just to see that happen at the next level and so early on is really promising. I think there could be easy like 5 or 6 games this year that we see ended with Willie Cauley-Stein smothering someone on the perimeter with a shot clock going off.
Go ahead.
So who do you have with Willie in that kind of like trying to get stops lineup, or just trying to end the game?
In those final seconds, I mean, we mentioned Willie. I want a forging on the court who knows the defense and knows their tendencies. So that's going to be Rondo there. I want Boogie in there as well, just rebound in the paint. Yeah. So you have those three together, and then I don't know. In those situations, I'd also just like, because if the other team makes a shot, you don't have a timeout. I want a shooter out there as well at the guards. Well,
I think you want Ben and Rondo almost, because you want length and you want kind of athleticism on the break.
Ben's better so Ben's better. Yeah.
So and also just I think although Ben can get lost defensively sometimes and lose his man, his just length, I think he can bother people, as well as just in the last 2 minutes if you're up and you get stops, and then those transition points. His chemistry with Gay on those transition breaks they're just basically he's either getting to the line or getting points every time. So I think that's pretty useful.
So in that final minute, we're looking at Rondo, McLemore, Gay, Willie Cauley-Stein, Cousins.
I think that's what I'd like to see. I'm not sure if we will. I guess that's just what we also think should be the starting lineup. So I guess that kind of makes sense in terms of like it's kind of balanced. And that's, I guess, what you want in a starting lineup. And then as well, if it's your starting lineup, then it should be the lineup you trust, and they play the most together, so the communication will be good. I kind of have a feeling that they may have Collison out there a lot though to finish games.
Well, you mentioned before the show that Collison's talked about a lot that according to him, he's going to be a big part of that late fourth quarter situation. So
how do you? I know we haven't really seen it in games much. Apparently, there's been some practices where they played together. But how many minutes do you think Rondo and Collison played together?
Or
kind of what times in the game?
I think like third quarter, because obviously Carl wants Collison kind of be the commander, so I think it's going to be mixed up. 10.
Because I kind of almost like it. Maybe you just play Rondo the first quarter and the third quarter, and then Collison the rest.
Yeah, it's just about getting them to get.
And then you just maybe have like a little bit of overlap, or so like the last 4 minutes, say, of the first quarter, you play them together, and the last 2 minutes of the third quarter, you play them together, something like that. Or like the first 2 minutes of the fourth.
Yeah, I'm gonna take 8 minutes, maybe 8-10 minutes a game or around there.
Okay. It'll just be interesting how it looks. I guess it's also like I don't think you can do it against like the Golden State Warriors unless maybe you had Collison on Steph and Rondo on Clay. But still, then I think just Clay's so strong he can just take Rondo into the post. But then I guess Rondo's got length to deal with post defenders. It's just interesting. I don't think either of them are ideal to put on two guard, although Collison has done that with the Clippers, so then maybe there's some kind of use to it. And if you're switching everyone, so maybe that's the time when you go small, you have someone like Willie Cauley-Stein just to smother the perimeter. So I think that'll be kind of interesting how they use the 2-point guards and how they kind of compensate for that lack of size. I think it'll be, although you'll be able to score a lot with Marco out there as well, I just think defensively that's just so small. So I thought that was an interesting lineup, but interesting in a way in which I'd like to see if that can actually work, because I'm not sure it can.
What do you think about like just these are more end of the bench guys like Quincy AC, Karam? When do you think we're going to be seeing Quincy AC, Karam Butler in games?
I think maybe Caron we see. I think we see Caron more than AC. I think he'll probably be the 10th man off the bench. And then I'm hoping that Moreland's on before AC. Maybe it's just depending on the matchup. If they're trying to get a big away from the basket, they'll have AC out there because he's a little bit more of a threat from the perimeter. I think he shot like 40 threes for the Knicks last year, whereas Moreland really doesn't have range at all. So then maybe that's the one time. So maybe like a Memphis maybe, and you're trying to get Zebo away from defending the rim, so you just post AC out in the corner. Maybe that's one kind of instance. But I don't think you really want to see AC that much, and I guess that's kind of good. I think you'll see him if one of the 3 bigs are out. Maybe if Kufos is out, then you see AC play, and if Willie's out, maybe that's when you see Moreland. So maybe that's like the best way of kind of thinking about it, because like Kufos has a little bit of a jumper range. The issue of AC, I don't think he can really rebound, especially in preseason. He was getting boxed out really easily and just couldn't get any boards. So I think maybe you have to play him with Boogie, and then so it almost works as like a small lineup, and then Boogie's playing the center.
AC, I'm obviously both hoping he needs to be the 5th big, because really I'm not sure what he offers. I mean, I guess outside
he can dunk. He can dunk on people. He's maybe like the Derek Williams of this year, but like a better defensively. But like he's just like good for big dunks and the odd open free. So maybe that's kind of his role. He's got better hair or no hair, but it looks better than what Derek Williams has got.
Yeah, so hopefully we do see more. So I will ask you this: late fourth quarter, you're down by 2, or you're down by 3. Who do you? Late fourth quarter game. Who do you want taking the last shot?
The open guy.
The open guy.
And that would be a big change from years past, where it's been Rudy or Cousins. Regardless, particularly that time when the games when Cousins was out and Rudy wasn't, it would just the ball was stuck in Rudy's hands.
Rudy ISO.
Yeah. So I think that would be like if you're in those situations and the ball's going to like the first 7 seconds of the shot clock, it's the ball's trying to find the open shot, and then you put it into the post if you don't find anything to Boogie. that's the way I think you have to play. Because like Boogie against a double team is better than anyone else's contested shot on the perimeter.
So in that situation, like let's you call a timeout. Yeah, let's say 15 seconds left. Boogie, who else in that lineup?
I think if you've got 15 seconds left, I think you maybe want to have Rondo out there just because of the way he's been able to manipulate plays, particularly out of timeouts. In the preseason, he's been really good at finding the open man. There's that one pass to Willie Cauley-Stein where Willie should have really just timed it a bit better and gone straight for the oop, but he had time to like catch it, jump back up and dunk it. But there's been like 4 or 5 out of timeout plays that have been really impressive. So I think when you have that little time on the shot clock, and I think once it gets down to 5 seconds, you probably want someone that can shoot. But when 15 seconds, you probably want someone that can create the best shot in that time. And he's smart enough to take a timeout, and if you have one. So he would be my choice. Then I'd probably go whoever's been the hottest out of Ben, Collison, and Marco. I'd probably play 2 of those. And then Boogie and Gay. So you go like the hottest out of the 3-point shooters, and then Boogie and Gay. I think just always in the clutch, you have to have your best 2 scorers out there. And also rebounders. I think his rebounding is really good for his position, even when he's playing at the 4. His length can like disrupt rebound. So I think not only are they useful scorers, but they're also useful on the boards, which are pretty important in that clutch time.
Yeah. All right. What else do we want to cover with these rotations?
Is there anyone else? I mean, because like Collison and Rondo, who's ending that game, because if you like, it's hard if like Rondo doesn't find a shot in those 10 seconds and he's got to heave one up. You'd much prefer to have Collison in there. So that's kind of like, that's the dilemma. But you just hope that maybe you always try and keep a timeout for that. So then if you get to 5 seconds, you can call a timeout and then you can get all shooters out there. But yeah, it's a tough one, I think.
Yeah. Do you consider? I'm trying to think about Kufos. I feel like, yeah.
I just don't think. I think you want to go small. I think so many games are going to end small, and depending if you're chasing, I think it's going to be Gay at the 4. Yeah, I just think I think we're going to see Gay at the 4 a lot more than we probably think, and maybe that'll be partly. There's going to be times when one of the bigs injured, and then Gay's going to be pretty much living at the 4, I would say. And I think there's not many power forwards that can really destroy him. I thought he played really well against Zebo. The short amount of time, although that was the one time where Carl kind of took him away from playing the 4. But I think that's going to be quite a lot of his play is going to be at the 4, and I think that kind of makes him play smarter, because he knows that he doesn't post up as much, and he takes away the bigs from the basket, so he takes more free he has more open threes, so it kind of makes him play a better brand of basketball. Although he's been better even before George Karl, but I think it just kind of it solidifies their idea of the 3 is the better shot, because the big guy is taking a while to close out on him.
Yeah.
Should we talk about then kind of matchups against Clippers?
Yeah. For the upcoming, so yeah, real quickly, Kings schedule. Yeah, you got Clippers twice, and Grizzlies next week. Yeah, we can talk about
the Lakers teams or the LA teams.
LA teams, yeah.
And it's the Is it the second Clippers game is away? Yeah.
Second, yeah.
So I guess with the Clippers, it sounds like the starting lineup's going to be Paul, Redick, Lance, Griffin, and DeAndre. I think Lance has looked really good, which I guess is the promising thing for the Clippers. I guess what the negative would be is who is the creator off the bench. So I think that could be somewhere where the Kings could probably trouble their second unit with kind of having to rely on Austin Rivers to be a creator when really he's just kind of a chucker. So I kind of like that they're going to Lance with the starters, just because I think it makes maybe it means that they have to use Josh Smith as the creator off the bench, but then if he's playing center, I guess that's kind of interesting. So then he's going to be probably playing at the elbow and creating from there, and so then and then maybe that's also a big reason why you want to have Willie playing center there, because he can come to the elbow and defend, close out on those jumpers, but then he's also got the agility to recover, to protect the rim from recovering from the elbow. So I think that could be maybe one reason why he would be coming off the bench, and I think that would be like a really smart way to use him. Obviously, like Paul Pierce, I'd assume he's going to be playing the 4. And so then that's kind of a nice matchup in terms of like Caspi, in terms of their kind of similar size. I think Caspi's length, and he's got enough athleticism or more than enough athleticism to stick with him at the perimeter, and can probably will challenge Pierce a lot in transition. Just like his hustle and effort will tire Pierce out. So I quite like that. And then you have like Wes Johnson on the wing. So I think whoever the Kings have playing the wing, that's a really good matchup. Wes Johnson's a pretty bad defender. So I think the bench unit could make hay. And it's just basically like trying to survive the starting unit, because they're just so good. So then that could be another reason why James Anderson and Kufos would be starting, is just to have that experience and more of a solid, dependable defensive unit, so the game doesn't get away from them to start the first and the second half. It's hard to say kind of what they'll do in the second game. They will be coming off a back-to-back the second game, so that could alter it. But then I think that's kind of nice that the Lakers, they can play small ball, so then you maybe don't use the bigs as much. The Lakers game to save them then for the Clippers game coming back in the second half of the back-to-back. So that kind of works, but I think that we'll see kind of a big adjustment. I hope we see kind of an adjustment from the first Clippers game to the second Clippers game. Even if they kind of play well, I think it's just like smart to not give such a good team like the same look twice. Is there anything on the Clippers you're particularly looking at matchup wise?
I mean, just looking at their bench too much is just it'll be nice to have an advantage over that, because when we're talking about Cole Aldridge and Josh Smith.
I think Aldridge is okay. Yeah, it'll be interesting who they play at center.
Yeah. So you got that situation. I mean, I guess James Anderson is providing the deep for Redick. I mean, if the starters can keep it close, I feel like, with the advantage on the bench, this could be a game that Kings could win.
Oh, they beat them early on last year. I'm pretty sure. Was that the second game of the year? I can't. I know they beat them at some point. Or do some quick research. And I think, like, in terms of bigs, I do think that DeMarcus causes them so much trouble. So I kind of like how that goes. I don't know how I'm going to be able to find.
Yeah.
Whether
Last
they
year,
won or not.
King beat the Clippers in LA.
Okay.
Third game of the season.
Okay. So maybe there'll be a repeat as we played them third game of the season this year. So maybe that's a good omen.
Yeah.
And I guess there could be like I know there was kind of like some people were saying like about how the Clippers are coming back from a trip in China, but they look pretty good coming back. Although they got off to a slow start in their last preseason game against Portland, but then they came back. I think they were down like 30, and then they came back and won it. And they look pretty good. I think it's just kind of slowing down that first unit and trying to get your leads up against the bench.
Yeah. So, want to take a look at this potential Clippers lineup or Lakers with lineup?
So I guess it's going to be Randall, Clarkson, Kobe, Randall. So Russell, Clarkson, Kobe, Randall, and
Hibbert.
Yeah. Is that going to be the starters? I'd assume so.
Think Kobe's expected to play, so it looks locked in.
Because he had that like bruise from the Kings preseason game, where he got like kneed, who he like ran into Kufos's knee and went off. So I guess with that, like, it'll be interesting. I don't think Hibbert can really deal with the Kings bigs, and they have just awful perimeter defense. So I think that's really a game you want to go small, and you bring Hibbert away from the basket by having Boogie on him and then playing at the elbow, and then you just dribble drive, and because you can just, it's so easy to get past their perimeter defenders. Their bench is maybe kind of more interesting, where it's just a bunch of chuckers. It'll be fun to watch like Collison against Lou and how that goes. But I think like the Lakers game should be a pretty easy win.
Yeah, I mean, this will be Russell's first start in the preseason. He had some issues with turnovers, and I think Rondo, it's a situation where he can take advantage of. You mentioned the small line, potentially Gay at the fourth. I mean, this is just, I don't know, this may be too much optimism. This is the thing where just how rosters are now, these are games Kings should easily win this year. Just with how they match up.
Really should sweep the Lakers, I think. They're not a very good team. Randall's looked pretty good, just like in terms of his handle and playmaking, and there's a couple of times where he was dribbling getting to the basket and then like having no look passes, dump offs to open shots. So, but I think he can I don't think he can dominate Gay. So I think this is a game where we definitely see them go small, and then just DeMarcus can kill Hibbert. I don't particularly think Hibbert's a great defender. He looks like in better shape than he has, but he's not the best athlete. And that kind of starting lineup's just so strange, where it's like 3 guys that you want to play up tempo and run with, and then 2 guys that you want to slow it down and play half court with. So it's kind of interesting, like how they'll work. I'd rather see Clarkson off the bench, so I wonder if they kind of try and split up the Russell and Clarkson minutes.
Well, yeah, one thing I just read, Byron Scott said that D'Angelo Russell is not guaranteed to start. It could be someone else.
Okay. I guess that's one good thing to say, is that Byron Scott's an awful coach, so they're going to play all the old guys to end games. So it'll probably be Lou Williams, probably Clarkson. I think he's probably earned enough to end games. Probably Lou Williams, just because he can shoot and score. And then they've got Ed Davis, don't they? So it'll probably be Kobe, Ed Davis, and Hibbert ending games.
Yeah.
So
Brandon Bass, Roy Hibbert.
I'll be Bass, yeah. Ed Davis is with Portland now.
And don't forget about Meta World Peace.
I'm not sure he's going to play much, but maybe there'll be a time where you have Meta versus Caron Butler. That'll be good.
Yeah.
Maybe fourth quarter when the Kings are up 20. Will be Meta versus Caron Butler. That'll be fun.
So we want to look at season prediction? First, this week prediction, yeah.
Okay. I'll go the Kings 2-1. And I don't know which. So obviously the Lakers will be one win. I'm not sure which of the Clippers game. Maybe the second Clippers game will be a win. As they have, I think they're playing Memphis the next week. I'll just check that. They're playing the Mavs next week, so maybe not the next day. So maybe I'll go Kings win the first two and then lose to the Clippers on their home court.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping you'd pick the third game, so it'd be different. But yeah, I have Kings winning the opener tomorrow. Close game, obviously, but I think bench advantage can win that out. And Kings need to win that by double digits, frankly.
Yeah, I think that would be kind of an early test. The Lakers haven't looked good in preseason. And I mean, the Kings kind of have. I think just like Russell, I don't think can take advantage of Rondo just because, I mean, I didn't really like Russell coming out, but he's just not that explosive. So that's the one area where you can really hurt Rondo. I think we saw that with the first preseason game with Lillard. He could just blow past him. And then just Rondo's smart enough to kind of take away stuff. And just like Russell can only finish with one hand. He kind of telegraphs his shots. He does that like 2 dribbles to the left, pull up. So I think he's an easy guy to scout just because he hasn't really got much of a game yet. He's got really good passing vision, but then he hasn't really got great options to pass to. It'll be interesting how they defend them, because I don't think they're really a team. Maybe it is a team that you switch on just because it's not going to be that much movement. Although we've normally seen with Kobe, they have been on him and just like trailing him, and he's just constantly running behind. So that'd be kind of interesting. I think Ben played Kobe so much now that he should have like a good handle on his ISOs, because it's a lot of post up on the wing still. So I think that would just be interesting. I just hope that they play Ben at least for like the first 10 games. And that's something that Carl talked about before only a couple of weeks ago. Is like he wants to have like kind of one starting unit. So strange that he's already kind of changed his mind, but he wants to have one kind of starting unit for the first 10, 20 games and then kind of adjust from there. So I kind of like that mindset of like going with what you think will work best first and sit and like not trying to preempt things that are going to go wrong, but work through them. And then if there's a better option that you've seen in game, you move to that. So that'd be kind of what I'd like to see from them. And yeah, I just think the Lakers game is like a good time to kind of like get your confidence up, because it's a pretty rough 8 games until kind of the Eastern Conference teams come in. So you've got like, after the second Clippers game, you've got Grizzlies, Suns, Rocket, Warriors, Spurs, and then the Pistons. And the Pistons are probably going to be better than they have been. So that's a pretty rough stretch up until the Pistons. Luckily, there's only that Suns game is not at home. So there's a lot of home games. So that kind of helps. And I think only the Suns comes back off the back of the Grizzlies game, and the Warriors is back-to-back with the Rockets. But they're both at home. At least the Rockets Warriors is at home, so that kind of works.
Yeah.
Should we move on to season projections then, or do you have any other thoughts on the first 3 games?
No, I think we'll pretty much nail those three. And again, next Tuesday we're going to have Justin Russo on, who covers the Clippers for SB Nation. So look forward to have him on talking about the games that happened, everything going on there. But just, overall, the first 10 games, because there's a lot of hype about the Kings this season in Sacramento. First 10 games might be rough. I don't think people will, but don't overreact. Just give it time. Give the team time to develop chemistry, everything going. And because this can be a good team this season.
One thing I think you can say is the Kings were really good at home last year. I'm just trying to find I believe they won like 26 games at home. I can only see 5 away wins. So maybe most of the games being at home is kind of an advantage, and obviously the last year at this arena, so it's going to be I think the atmosphere is going to be really good. So maybe that's kind of a help as well. So maybe that kind of helps. I think it's like first of the 12 game, 10 of the first 12 games are at home. So if you can get some momentum, and if you win a couple of those early home games, then you can kind of build a fortress atmosphere for that last year. Maybe that's like the best case scenario, and you get out like 500. If they can get around 500 coming out of the first 10 games, I think that's like a really good sign.
Yeah. Yeah. So there we go.
Should we do season preview then?
Yeah.
Or like season prediction?
Yeah.
So what's?
Go ahead.
I'm going to go 44 wins. And that's kind of like they'll probably be injured for a bit prediction. And maybe that's like pretty positive. Oh, I think that's like maybe a bit high. I just think like you were going to see Boogie hit a next gear. Carl's never coached a team in 2 decades or almost 3 decades that has gone under 500. I just think it's really deep, and I don't see the bottom of the. I think the bottom of the West has got worse, and I think the Kings can just beat up on some teams and keep Boogie fresh, and then you have Boogie for the tougher opponents, and then Boogie can just take over a whole game, and there's not really. I haven't really seen many solutions to stopping him other than him stopping himself, and he's kind of got better at that now as well. So, I think 44 wins is kind of like that's my holding myself back as well. I think somewhat.
Yeah, I think 44 wins. I have them at 42 wins, and at 42, you're fighting for the 8th seed, which I think people from the outside understand this, but just the fact that we could be talking about a 40-win season for the Kings, potentially fighting for the 8th spot, that is just so huge for this franchise, so huge for the city of Sacramento. So, I think there is a lot of reason to be excited about the team. They could win 40, 42, 44 games. And if you're fighting for that playoff spot in the last city I refuse to call it Sleep Train, I'm going to call it Arco Arena. That's gonna fill the stadium. That's gonna get the crowd going, and that's gonna make that place tougher to play. And maybe you do get that 8th seed, and maybe you only get 2 games at home, but there's gonna be a raucous crowd there. And I just think, you know what, Kings may not nationally do have a lot of success this year, but I think I'm gonna say they win 42 games, they get the 8th seed, and they win a playoff game.
I think like if they're just in the race in the last month, I think that's like I mean, that's like the worst case scenario for me is like they're at least they have like a chance the last month, and I'll be kind of happy with that. It'll show like progress, and then you go into, I guess like the best thing about like the way in which the roster is constructed at the moment in terms of like there's only one guy that's going to be a free agent next year, out of like the starting 10 like rotation, and that's Rondo. And if he has a good year, then arguably it would be most likely that he would re-sign here with kind of the amount of cap space, and just like if he's found somewhere that he's playing well, you doubt with like the issues he's had the past couple of years that he would want to move away from that. And so I think that's a huge thing where you have like a roster all under 30, all under contract for at least 2-3 years. So that's like the really exciting part, is that you can that's becomes quite a desirable place to come with like a Hall of Fame coach, an all-star in DeMarcus Cousins, and then like a strong roster. If you can bring in one more big name, you could have a pretty formidable team. So I think that that's got to be like the minimum expectation, is to at least be kind of like in the conversation come the last month. And I think that would be a lot different than thinking about the draft pick, because hopefully this will be the year we don't have a draft pick, which maybe most teams won't think about, but being a good thing. But I think for the Kings it really would be.
Absolutely. I mean, it goes back to all the threads. Kings were laughed at because all the draft pick stuff. But if the Kings can go from a 29-win team to a 40, 42-win team, that is worth everything. That's worth the draft pick. It's just that uplifts the city. It gets DeMarcus Cousins. He can take that next step forward. And just this program gets rolling. You mentioned that you have a lot of guys on a contract. You have some more money, perhaps, next free agency, you look at Ryan Anderson or someone. Just help that team more. And just overall, there's a lot to be excited about in Sacramento. So it's going to be a fun year. And if it all does go horribly and things just catch fire and fall apart, just because there's the narrative out there that DeMarcus Cousins will be traded, just set this for the record. George Karl would be the first to go if it all goes to heck.
And then, I mean, I think because of Vlade Divac being there, Boogie would stay for like one more coach. But I mean, that's like the last straw, probably.
Yeah.
But to like talk about the pick you gave to the Sixers, the earliest that could go to the Sixers is 2018, and that's when like DeMarcus would be in his contract year. So to say like you're giving up the future, it's like, and saying like this is not how you rebuild a team. The whole point of like what the Sixers are doing, what teams are trying to do to rebuild, is what the Kings have. They're looking for an all-star. The Kings have that all-star.
Yep.
So now you're just trying to build like competency around him. And if like the worst case scenario and you like it doesn't work out and you have to trade Boogie, you can get as many first round picks as you want. That first round pick in 2018 is not going to be important. You'll be able to get plenty from DeMarcus Cousins. And if it does work out and Boogie's playing fine, it's like plenty of teams trade away like first round picks in the 20s to put a role player around their stars. So to be able to, basically the way I see it is they're giving away a first round pick to keep DeMarcus Cousins, and most teams would trade a first round pick for DeMarcus Cousins. So I don't think there's really like an issue about that. It's just, I guess it's the position where people believe the team is. If like the Pelicans gave up 2 first round picks to put Drew Holiday around Davis, and to me it's like you gave up 2 first round picks to get rid of 2 like really bad contracts, and maybe you can say you gave away 2 first round picks because you got rid of Stauskas as well. I mean, I think that was, in hindsight, that was a pretty bad pick. Oh, a lot of people said it was a bad pick at the time, but to get like Kufos, Bellinelli, just to get Kufos and Bellinelli for 2 first-round picks for 3 years and get rid of all that dead money. And I know people said you can stretch those contracts, but I mean, we have 1 million of a stretch provision on the roster as it is. If you wanted to put another 5 million on the next 3 years in stretch provisions, then people would just be laughing at how much dead money was on the roster and how that could have been a player. So,
Precise.
yeah, I think you have to kind of, and like people say, you've got to look long term, but I think when you have 3 years of DeMarcus Cousins, you have to think pretty short term and like what's the best scenario for him. And I think getting Vlade Divac, someone that like can speak the same language to DeMarcus, and I think that was one thing a reporter said, or someone said to DeMarcus, like, Vlade will go to war for you, and he just said he already has. So I think Vlade's won over DeMarcus at least, and so I don't see DeMarcus leaving this year. I think maybe if we go for another head coach and that doesn't work, then it becomes an issue because you just go through so many head coaches. So Carl and the next head coach, the next head coach is maybe the last one, but hopefully we don't get that far because I quite like Carl.
Yeah, and so those were our realistic and very pessimistic.
I think I think the only way in which the Kings don't get over 40 wins is if DeMarcus misses 20 games.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it.
And some people might say that's crazy, but I mean, look at the Kings starters last year. The bench was embarrassingly bad.
And Boogie didn't play. He played
Even
when he came back, he was barely playing.
Yeah. So just you have a remarkably improved bench. Hopefully a healthy Boogie who doesn't have sinus and just terrible stuff again this year. And if you have that 40-plus wins, it's going to be a good time.
Yeah, I'm really excited for tomorrow. It'll be fun to see it in real life. And should we go for like over the 3 games, who do you think the highest score is going to be? Most rebounds, most assists. Should we do that?
Yeah.
To finish off with?
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm going to go Collison the most assists because I just think he might play more minutes, especially against the Lakers. I think he'll play a lot. I think Gay maybe might have the most points just because he's been really hot shooting from outside. Maybe gets a new baby bump, if you excuse the pun. And rebounds, I guess DeMarcus rebounds.
Yeah.
So that'd be my pick. How about you?
My pick, let's see. If you're figuring Lakers, so stars may not play as much. Leading scorer, I'm going to say, you know what? For those 3 games, I'm going to say the leading scorer and leading assist guy will be Darren Collison.
Oh, that's good. I don't know if he can be. Bellinelli might be a good one for leading scorer as well.
Yeah.
Because he just takes so many shots. I'm just going to be interested if he gets benched for just taking so many shots. But we'll see.
Well,
he was going crazy in preseason.
I'll make stop signs and take him to the game and wave them in front of Marco.
I don't mind. I mean, like it was just interesting, and people were saying he was on fire when he was shooting like 30% from behind the 3, but he just shot so many, and like quite a few went in and out. But yeah, it was just funny.
He's all about that 2K life. Shoot all the 3s you can.
Whereas Gay was literally on fire. He was just like his stroke from 3 is just so nice and just like so easy.
Any bold predictions for the 3 games?
I'll go Ben McLemore only ends 1 game in the final lineup. And that's going to be like a sad bold prediction. And that'll probably be the Lakers game.
Oh.
And maybe he won't even end that, actually. Maybe Ben doesn't end a single game. I'll go for that.
Oof.
But then one will be because the game's over. So
Yeah.
But we'll see. Hopefully I'm wrong on that one. You never know. Maybe they're just trying like a different way to motivate Ben by giving him some pressure. Because this is the first time he's really had competition in a legit form. So.
Yeah. And the good news is the season starts. Kings season starts tomorrow, and the real fun begins. Cannot wait.
Oh, thanks for listening. And do you want to say goodbye? Oh, have you got a wild prediction?
Well, no wild predictions here. I'm just, no bold prediction. I just wanted to get one from you, and then.
Right. Does Boogie get a technical in the first 3 games? Because he hates the Clippers.
Yeah, he's getting a technical. He faces Chris Paul twice, so yeah, it's gonna happen.
Who gets more technicals though, the Clippers or Boogie?
Clippers. Well,
Clippers. Okay, that's good. Do you think Boogie gets suspended for a game? No, you think he gets below the 16 again?
Yeah, I'll say he gets below.
What was his 11. Aim last year? 10?
I thought he had like 8 last year was his goal.
Okay, well he got to like 15 or something.
Yeah, I think he'll finish below 12 this year.
That's going to be fun. I'm just excited. It's going to be so fun to watch.
Wins. All
right, well, should probably go now. Yes. Getting too excited.
Yeah. Kings Basketball Podcast. Thank you for listening to the Sac Off Kings Basketball Podcast. We will be back next week. Lots and lots of Kings basketball, lots and lots of excitement. And we'll have real games to talk about, which will be fun. So thanks again for listening.